All Goblin is a game which I got gifted for Christmas by Fighty Claus, and it's such an interesting fact that it's only okay. However, I can really see something which could be amazing with more time and refinement. Probably a lot of refinement because based on my time messing around with it, game dev is time consuming and this was made by just one guy. So let's go into the most goblinly game to ever, Goblin. You're instructed to create your Goblin, which is an unnecessary but cool feature. Honestly, it makes more sense compared to some other games with character creators, considering you always see your Goblin and see some stuff like facial features more often. Anyway, you pop out of a special Goblin containment device and your only goal is to get to the end and escape, which is a simple but effective goal. After you get a very quick tutorial on the slingshot, you will launch into your first enemy encounters with 3 soldiers. The combat is really the main flaw with this game. It's not even that bad and could be refined to be incredibly nice. Your only attack is a ranged one with your slingshot, where you pick up projectiles, the main one being bricks, guns, and robot parts. There are a couple other things you can pick up, with each doing different damage. I didn't know these did different damage until I got to the out of the way damage upgrade thing. I'm not sure what it's meant to be. How I thought the combat worked is that you need to headshot the enemy to kill them. The guards, no matter how much I fired bricks at them, they seemingly wouldn't die unless I actually headshot them. So that made me think you needed to headshot, and some more tougher enemies needed a higher tier sort of projectile. But no, it's actually health based. I think to make the fact that it is health bar based easier to actually understand, I feel like a health bar for the enemies would be appreciated. It'll help communicate the message of how the combat system works while still making it so you have no tutorials or very minimal tutorials and are just thrust into the world. Slingshot is pretty decent to use as well. The projectiles do a simple short range curve based on how you've angled it, traveling with what I believe is a consistent distance. It may be weird collision, but some projectiles have different weights and that actually changes how far you fire them. I believe this is because I found that the robot limbs don't fly as far as something like the bricks. The only thing I can think of which may improve this is to make the projectiles shoot slightly faster or have slightly more range, but I actually don't think it'll properly improve the attack rather than just make it different. So I think, as it is, the attack doesn't really need that much changing. However, it's the only attack. The variety of projectiles helps a bit, but it is only one attack. However, I don't think it's that much of an issue due to the fact that this game is only like an arrow too long. It doesn't matter that much, and it doesn't get tiring to use against the enemies, which themselves are, well, they could be improved. 3 types I remember encountering: the soldiers, laser alien guy things, and robots. The soldiers are basically stormtroopers where, once they see you, they sporadically shoot at you with kind of poor aim. They're alright, I guess. The only real way I could find to defeat them is to do absolutely nothing and fire them and pray to whatever god I feel like that day. God, please make the guard and the goblin make out. Or just dash straight at them and hopefully I don't die. Or you can also sneak behind them and bonk them before they saw me, but that was rather really impossible unless it's specifically set up for you to do that. The second one is a laser alien guy. When they see you, they slowly start firing a laser at you and they move towards you. They're okay, but by far the least common enemy in the game, and they are very unlikely to hit you as it needs some time to actually have the laser to be on you as it starts at around their feet, which kind of just makes them a non-threat. In juxtaposition, the robots are absolute pains. They are bulky as hell and incredibly hard to hit because they beeline for you once they see you, which wouldn't be so horrible if they didn't have 2 lasers and a much shorter time for the lasers to actually begin hitting you. They're also way faster than you, so you can't really try and outrun them a bit and then aim back and hit. You sort of just have to go, and they just feel completely unfair, especially when they just seem to refuse to die, since you aren't given really anything to be able to avoid their attack. And they deplete your health bar quite fast. So it feels like complete luck whether or not I can actually defeat them. Best you can really do is try to hide around corners to avoid getting hit. But even then, you need to go into their line of fire to actually kill them. I found that sometimes when hiding around corners, their lasers sort of don't appear for a little bit, but they still try ramming into you, and they're just not fun to deal with, especially because the movement doesn't really give you any options to deal with them. The movement is pretty basic. It's just a walk and a jump, which is fine. In fact, the jump is surprisingly fun to use for platforming. It mainly just doesn't suit the robot, since its attack is pretty much impossible to avoid. Otherwise, it works fine enough for exploring, which is honestly quite fun in this game. I don't know why, but I just really like exploring this little area you have access to in the game. It's fun to just see what's going on, and I kind of wish the game lent a bit more into this exploration thing than it did. It'd be an absolute pain to design and implement, and it might be a bit tough and take ages, but it would have been cool if there was a more openness in where you could go. Not like a proper open world, but maybe there could be just a few different paths to get to the same objective. I don't know. Like, it's nice seeing the big tower in the distance and finding the path to get to it. And just ascending the tower was cool. Finding a generator for the elevator at the beginning of a game was awesome. Scaling the cliffside to find a completely new area to explore, despite the fact that there wasn't really anything to do since I went here for the first time after being the game, was kinda underwhelming. But it was still cool to find. I also really like how it's roguelike-esque in its design. I like how you always spawn in the same location but unlock shortcuts to the next locations, which I just really like as a design feature, as it makes everything feel so much more connected. Even though if the game had a checkpoint or bonfire system, it would have worked and things would have felt somewhat connected, the fact you get shortcuts just makes it feel so much cooler. This is definitely a personal preference thing, and just something I just really like in sort of more 3D games, but I still really like it. The primary drawback from this game at the moment is kind of just it's quite buggy. Yeah, there are a lot of little bugs or things that aren't that nice. There are some janky collision in spots, and I got to an inescapable spot once, which was weird. The camera would glitch out when holding the robot appendages sometimes, which is not very fun on the eyes, and the camera in general isn't great. The camera mainly just moves a bit inconsistently, and it's usually got to do with the objects, as it moves much faster if it's close to a wall than however far back it usually is from the Goblin, which just makes the camera feel really weird. I don't know how to describe it, but it just feels really inconsistent and just makes the game a bit more frustrating. But honestly, I feel like just ironing out the bugs and expanding the game would be all that's needed for this game to be truly incredible. But the thing is, that's not what this game's aiming for. It's a first project by one guy that's meant to be small scale, and that's fine. Would I like for it to be bigger and better? Of course I would. But for one guy, this is pretty impressive as is. I've tried making a game, and it's nowhere near this quality. It might have been structurally sound, but it was only a 2D game, and nowhere near as depth as this I feel like. And I feel like with enough experience and time, the creator could end up being one of the all-time great indie developers. Anyway, this game has a boss. It sure does. Is that joke enough to end on? I genuinely have no idea. There's a reason this short talk has been short. I'm talking about a pretty short game, and I don't really have a joke. All Goblin, more like all right. Yeah, I don't have anything.